Good evening. This is a regular meeting of the Select Board for Tuesday, February 22nd, 2022. I have an announcement, but before I dive into that, are there any other announcements? I know Mel might want to make an announcement. John or Bernard, do you have any announcements that you want to make?
I would like to say something in response to Mel's announcement, but
Okay, I will.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing.
Okay, so why don't we turn it over to Mel first?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, and to the public. I want to read an announcement that came from the Director of Public Health today. It's a announcement that's written to all food establishments, commercial fitness center settings, and indoor entertainment settings from Patrick J. Maloney, our Acting Commissioner of Public Health. Effective immediately, the regulations requiring COVID-19 evidence of vaccination in designated establishments is lifted. Establishments are no longer required to check patrons' COVID-19 ID cards. The Brookline Department of Public Health has joined with Boston and other Boston metro communities to implement this important public health measure. And the metric that departments have been monitoring reflect a reduction in ICU bed occupancy rates, hospitalizations, and positivity rates. Boston and the other metro communities have also lifted their vaccine card requirement. Brookline will continue to require masks in all outdoor environments at this time, all indoor environments at this time. The Advisory Council on Public Health and Health Commissioner will evaluate COVID data from the February 19th through 27th school vacation week and determine if lifting the mask mandate is warranted. The ACPH meeting will be held the week of March 14th, and that date and time will be posted soon. Mr. Maloney concludes by thanking the business community and the public for their continued cooperation to assist the Brookline Department of Public Health in stopping the spread of COVID in our community. Thank you.
Great. Bernard, did you want to say something?
Yes, I apologize. I'm getting my studio set up properly. Hey, that's great news, Mel. Means that we're getting close to out of this pandemic. However, I think we can't be too careful. As we lift the vaccine requirements, I think we should reflect on events in England. On Monday, Great Britain was expected to unveil plans to lift their remaining government pandemic regulations, including self-isolation for those testing positive for the virus. And their positivity rate had dropped from 29.9 on January 7 to 10.7 on February 15. A day before the plan was to be divulged, it was announced that 95-year-old Queen Elizabeth II, had COVID. So it seems that the virus is still out there hunting for victims. So I hope that people maintain their vigilance and continue to behave in a safe manner as we begin the process of coming out of this pandemic and easing the restrictions that we've placed. So.
Great. John?
Thank you. Thank you, Mel, for the announcement. Thank you, Heather, for a little bit of time. I promise not to use the time that would normally go to Raul and Miriam during my comments. I just want to point out a couple of things. This change in the mandate does not mean that, for example, a restaurant that wanted to continue to apply some sort of vaccine requirement could do so. I'm not sure there's any such restaurants in Brookline, but it essentially says that the situation on the ground has been changing. It's been very fluid since the very start of this pandemic. Our public health officials have done their absolute best to try to get ahead of the pandemic, of the virus, and at the same time, when events change and when we enter into a period where the virus seems to be in retreat, people need to address other needs. They have mental health needs. They have needs in terms of not only getting out for their mental health, but for their physical health. And so there's always going to be changes. And in the case of Brookline, sometimes it might take a day or two longer than in a city where a mayor can, on a dime, turn around and announce that he or she has had a change of has changed the decision based on the latest data. Things actually moved very quickly in Brookline over the weekend. And I want to thank our health department. I want to thank our health commissioner, Pat Maloney. I want to thank David Gladstone from the Chamber of Commerce, who has been very active in staying in touch with the business enterprises in Brookline to keep us informed of their concerns and their interest in this very important public health policy. I think I would ask all of the people listening tonight and the residents of Brookline to do what they always do in these situations, which is to be understanding and to be patient and to make the best of this situation. Some people are going to feel a little bit less secure as a result of it, but some people are going to be ecstatic at the opportunity to breathe a little without having to have the mask on everywhere they go. So everyone should observe their own individual rules as to what makes them feel the most safe and the most comfortable, but within the guidelines that have now been set and revised by our public health department. And then, we'll look at the situation every day and every week and try to do the best for the town.
Okay. There's an announcement that I would like to make that is not related to this, so bear with me. On January 30th, there was a snow event that lasted over 30 hours. At the end of the storm, the total snow accumulation measured 22 inches in Boston. Our crews worked incredibly hard to ensure that the roads were clear, bus stops were shoveled, and public buildings were accessible. Towards the end of the storm, while plowing to clear access to our main library, there was an incident involving one of our plow trucks and a small plow vehicle known as a bobcat. The employee driving the plow did not see the employee in the bobcat, and there was a collision. There were no serious injuries, but our DPW commissioner insisted on medical evaluation for both employees out of an abundance of caution. This crash was captured on video and was aired during a news story for Channel 7. Local media can and should report the news as they see it. However, I am disturbed and disappointed to learn that Channel 7 reporters showed up unannounced to not one, not two, but 3 of our DPW employees' homes. The Department of Labor conducted an investigation, and the cause of the crash was attributed to fatigue. The town has protocols in place to guard against this, but we will review those and require additional training that was recommended by the Department of Labor. Essential employees have had a rough 2 years under this pandemic. They performed admirably when faced with a blizzard of near historic proportions. They deserve better than to be subjected to TV news reports, creating the impression that they did something wrong. I take exception to that. There is no shortage of local stories that cry out for in-depth reporting. What about the worker shortage? What about the fact that we can't afford to pay these people competitive wages because by law, we can only raise taxes 2.5% each year, while inflation is growing at 5% each year? I get that it's harder to cover systemic problems with reporting that goes beyond endless replays of video from an accident scene. When in-depth reporting happens on stories that matter, we will be the first to welcome it. For now, we can only thank our hardworking DPW. They deserve credit for a job well done, even if that's not what they got from Channel 7. Any other updates or announcements before we go to public comment? Bernard.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for that comment. I think it's very important for people to not be swayed by some of the things we see on TV and to recognize how hard our DPW workers and others work under very, very trying circumstances of the storm that occurred a few days ago. So thank you for raising that issue.
Thank you. It's hard for me to keep my anger at bay with what I at least think I know about the situation. So let's move on to public comment. Since we don't have our vice chair here, I will just lay out some ground rules. Each person is limited to 3 minutes. Devin will give you a 30-second warning, and please no personal attacks. So Devin, who do we have first on the list?
First person signed up for public comment is Deborah Brown. Deborah, you've been promoted to a panelist. You can unmute and share your video if you're comfortable, and your 3 minutes will begin.
Thank you. And this is a little off topic, but thank you, Heather, for your remarks. People should not have to put up with that. So I appreciate it. So I want to talk about race tonight. I want to talk about the third rail because it's something that we don't typically talk about we don't talk about enough. And I want to talk about it because there are opportunities achieved and opportunities missed because we don't discuss race. You know, when you look at Brookline's disparity study, it highlights the need to confront race. And while they don't use phrases like disproportionate impact as part of their analysis, it's still pretty damning. If you look where people live in Brookline, it damn near looks like in North Brookline, like segregation. And if we can, I don't know, can we share?
Yes, yep.
I mean, look at this map. I mean, yellow is people of color and, you know, minority income, English, isolation. So we've got this information. And I just wanted to show you this quickly, but I think we have to figure out how to start using it. And as we proceed with the whole ARPA process, any process, why not use a map like this as an overlay? If DPW is going to lay some new trees out, well, look at the map. Where do we see people disproportionately impacted? Why not start there? Make it intentional. So I had a few more things to say. And so I can stop the share now. And so I just, I want to say that, we need to look at this disproportionality and we need to look at everything we do, the town, through an equity lens. So let's look at our unemployment data, housing, people's housing status, educational achievements, poverty rates.
You have 30 seconds.
Proximity stressors. Who uses the most of the town's resources relative to population? Who benefits from the town's resources? What are the health incomes? What are the health outcomes by race? And I know I'm winding down to 10 seconds, but if you could spare me just 10 more seconds, I just want to say that when you look at the poverty rates in Brookline, it's 8% white. For Blacks, it's 32%. It's 18% for Latinos, and it's 19% for Asians. So when I look at the ARPA money, one of the things that they say flat out is that the money should be used to help people who have been disproportionately impacted. And so as we have this conversation about race, it's truly relevant in the decisions that we're going to be making for ARPA, but beyond ARPA. So I ask you to begin to use a layered approach to figuring out where the work should take place. Thank you.
The next person signed up for public comment is Marilyn Carmona. You've been promoted to a panelist. You can unmute and share your video if you're comfortable, and your 3 minutes will begin.
I'm Marilyn. I lived in Brookline housing for 2 years, and I had no other choice but to move there. When I first seen the apartment, I really honestly didn't want to move in. Everything was old. But my sister, I was living with my sister at the time, and she was moving to Florida. So I had no choice but to, again, pick this apartment. And after the first year, my son started developing respiratory issues. So he was being monitored. Like every month, he would be at the doctor's every month or two with a cold. And finally, in September, he was diagnosed with asthma. And I'm pretty sure it's from the mold, the cockroaches, the old pipes, the old floors, like everything, the dust. It's disgusting in those apartments. And I noticed that in all cities, the projects are located on the outskirts of the city. I feel like this is a discrimination issue. And I have spoken on the board, on Brookline Housing Board, about them fixing stuff in the house. I have called multiple times I've spoken to the executive director and have gotten nowhere. Instead of fixing the inside of our homes, they were fixing the outside. They were fixing the parks that were pretty much done a few years ago, instead of putting money into these apartments that really needed to be done over. I had a leak in my home a year into living there, and they did nothing about it. My ceiling started peeling. There's just so many issues in these apartments. I'm a letter carrier in Brookline too, and I noticed that when I speak to residents around the area, like when I'm delivering mail, I tell them, like, they ask me where I'm from, and then I tell them that I lived in Brookline housing, and it's like they get really quiet. They don't know what to say, and I feel like I'm being shut out, and it's not a good feeling. I feel like something needs to be done. We need money and BHA. I recently moved in Cambridge, so now my doctor told me that in a place that I was before, it's going to take a year or more for my son to pretty much ease off of his asthma, if that was the case. So I won't know for like a year or two if it was the apartment itself that caused his asthma. But I'm here on the board speaking on behalf of everybody. Like my neighbor, I still speak with my neighbors. I still keep in touch with my neighbors, and I can always relay messages to you guys anonymously for them. But I do feel like we need something in place for BHA. I mean, I feel like we are more important than these bike lanes and
30 seconds.
And outdoor dining issues. And I feel like a lot of things happening in Brookline are not as important as what needs to be done with BHA. And that's all I have to say.
The next person signed up for public comment is Paul Warren. You've been promoted to a panelist. You can unmute and share your video, and your 3 minutes will begin.
Hi, good evening. My name is Paul Warren, and I'm coming before you to share some concerns I have with the housing production plan effort. My professional background includes more than 10 years leading research and consulting practices at a globally recognized leader in the field of primary research. I participated in the first online forum and was troubled by the methodology and engagement model. First, the format was geared towards those familiar with Zoom. If you're unfamiliar with that platform, older, have physical limitations or other limitations, you are at a significant disadvantage to have your voice heard. Personally, I have trouble reading text due to problems with my vision. With 150 or more people online, it was impossible and quite anxiety producing to try to keep up with the fast scrolling list of text messages. I also felt that the facilitator was cherry picking comments to drive the comments in a direction that seemed predetermined. I've heard this concern from multiple constituents and peers from town meeting. After the forum, I spoke with 2 members of the Housing Production Plan Working Group, and they told me that they too had serious concerns about how the online forum was run and thought that some portions of the online session was so poorly managed that the input needed to be excluded. With respect to the online survey that just completed on Friday, I have heard from multiple constituents and town meeting colleagues that the survey seemed designed with a predetermined outcome in mind. I believe that the survey was poorly designed and worded. It gave no definition of affordable housing, and it did not provide instructions that only one survey was to be filled out by person. In fact, multiple surveys could be submitted by an individual with no restriction. I was told by members involved in the working group that allowing multiple entries is a best practice. I can assure you that it is not a best practice. The inability to limit multiple entries by an individual with no ability to eliminate duplication raises serious questions about the validity of the data and any meaningful analysis that may come from it. The last thing I'd like to raise is the lack of transparency with the process. The working group overseeing this project is not meeting in public. The guidance and direction being provided to the consultants on behalf of the Brookline public is taking place behind closed doors. This lack of transparency is casting a dark cloud over this process. and will negatively impact the confidence that the public has in the recommendations that are delivered with this plan. Imagine for a moment what it would have been like to have both the police reimagining committees and the police reform committees conducting their work behind closed doors and out of the view of the public. This would never have been accepted. We must not accept this from the Housing Production Plan Working Group. I encourage you to intervene in the housing production plan process that seems to be veering off course. And please make it transparent to the public. Thank you.
At this time, that concludes the public comment period.
Okay, we will move into miscellaneous. I believe the first part of miscellaneous is meeting minutes from February 15th. Any edits or comments on those meeting minutes? I'm looking at you, Bernard.
I don't have any comments.
Oh, first time for everything, I guess.
Oh, I read them carefully. No, there may be some typos or grammatical problems, but.
Okay. So I will move the meeting minutes from February 15th. All those in favor, Bernard?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And then I will read off the remainder of the miscellaneous agenda. Question of approving extra work order 1, Clinton Road improvements in the amount of $37,638.50. Question of accepting a gift from the Friends of the Old Burying Ground to the Parks and Open Space Division for the costs associated with the Bartlett tree inventory of the old bury ground in the amount of $2,500. Question of approving a temporary wine and malt beverages non-sales license to the Lars Anderson Auto Museum to be held on Sunday, March 6th, 2022 for annual event expo at 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. at 15 Newton Street. 100 people are expected to attend. All those in favor, Bernard?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Moving in to our calendar, we have interviews. Do we have, is it Shana? Shayna?
It's Shayna.
Shayna, thank you for correcting me. And you're interested in the Indigenous Peoples Day Celebration Committee?
Yes, exactly.
Excellent. Well, welcome. Usually what we do is we ask you to talk about who you are, why you're interested in this, about 2 minutes, and then we'll open it up for questions from my fellow board members.
Okay. My name is Shayna Penna. I've been living here for about 14 years now. I married into a family, though, who has been here for 40 years. They live all over the town, Egmont, High Street, and on Kent. My husband works for the DPW, so thank you for what you just said, Heather. And I've been raising 2 daughters on Oakland Road Extension. I love it there. It's one of my favorite parts of this community. I'm a veteran, so I was in the Army National Guard. My husband was in the Army, and my whole entire family was in the Army. I went to UMass Boston for undergrad into an MIT program in China at Tsinghua University in Beijing, and that's where I got my MBA. Currently, I own a couple companies. So I have a humanitarian logistics company that I've been working on for a couple years now. I also do consulting for innovation and companies that are looking to work with the US government. And so I work on Department of Defense projects and things that help people. And so every project I work on has to have the intention of helping someone. In Brookline, I'm on the executive board of the League of Women Voters. I used to be on the census committee when it was around. And right now I'm on the community engagement subcommittee of ODICR. For the Indigenous Peoples Day celebration, I think I want to help because I'm really good at planning and putting things together. I enjoy working with Felina. We work on the League of Women Voters, and so I enjoy working with her, so I'd like to help her out with this. I'm also really good at fundraising. I just got a grant for the League of Women Voters, and my company. And so I look to help people with those little things and help this committee with that.
Excellent. Well, I understand that we have a number of openings, so they could certainly use the help. Any questions, Bernard?
I'll start off. Give us some ideas of what ideas you have for the work of the committee going forward. I mean, anything new that you would propose in terms of educational or other aspects of the committee's work?
I have to be honest, I have been trying to learn more about our Indigenous history in the United States. I actually realized a couple of years ago, I'm from Berkshire County, and I always thought, because of our location and how I grew up, that I knew about our Indigenous history. And then 2 years ago, I actually read something and I learned. And so to be honest, I honestly don't know about what I can contribute when it comes to the Indigenous part, because I'm just learning. I'm now learning about what happened in the United States and stuff like that. I think my skill set is more on like the planning and the strategy.
Excellent. How did you find out about this opportunity?
Felina mentioned it to me.
Okay. Yeah. John.
Thanks, Heather. And Shana, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't know that about you, and it was a pleasure to learn that tonight. I have to ask you a question based on meetings I've been a part of as an attendee. What is your view on the responsibility of committee members towards the way they conduct themselves towards the public at a meeting, say, at which a member of the public makes a comment?
I know where this is coming from, John. I appreciate the question. I would say that they shouldn't have behaved like I behaved at the last community engagement committee. I will say that, and I recognize that. And I was on yesterday thinking it was time for the meeting. I didn't realize it was a holiday. And so I was prepared to apologize, so I do think I am impulsive. I'll be honest. I make mistakes in some of the ways I interact with people, and I recognize that. And I learn from it, to be honest. I make mistakes on Facebook. I make mistakes in other places, and so I learned from it. And, I knew I was wrong for that a couple of weeks ago, and I will apologize for that.
I appreciate that answer very much. And I, I equally appreciate that my question was taken by you as I hope it was intended, a friendly question, because I think we all have to learn. Believe me, I've had my moments at meetings that I wish I could have over again, and we all have to learn from each other, and we all have to get better at this, and be as good at it as we can be, especially in our dealing with the public. So. I thank you for accepting my question in the spirit in which it was intended, and I thank you for your answer. I think that's that's an answer that I think helps enormously in this process.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Well, we will be making decisions at another meeting. Thank you again for your interest, and we will let you know.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay. Have a good night.
You too.
So next commission for the arts. I think these are the last two interviews. So we might be making appointments in the next week or so. Fran, welcome. If you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in serving on the Commission for the Arts, if you want to keep it around 2 minutes, and then we'll open it up to question and answer.
Hi, hello everybody, and thank you for having me here. I was planning to talk a little bit longer than that because I know you didn't get a bio or a resume from me, so I'll go as kind of quickly as I can. I've kind of dedicated my entire adult life to the arts and education and to finding the diversity, both the racial and the gender diversity within them. I started out as a teacher in a high school that was moving, where the community was moving from all white to predominantly Black, which created a lot of anxiety and confusion for the students. And so I tried to help them find their own voices and to select the kinds of materials that they could put their own stamp on. I founded a summer musical theater program and performance entity that was sponsored by the city and also by the Board of Education, and that opened up even to a greater diversity into the community and brought that in front of the footlights, but also behind it as well, which was very unusual in those days. And I directed it at a theater called Karamu, which was the first integrated theater in the United States. So all of these experiences had a tremendous effect on me. And when I had an opportunity to create my own show, I think some of the choices I made were reflected by that. So I have a show called The All Night Strut. It's an evocation of the 1930s and 40s of the swing era. And I say evocation because there were 4 characters in this show, and 2 of them are Black and 2 of them are white. And in the era itself, this would never have come to pass. And the show is kind of like a theatricalized Manhattan Transfer, if you know what that is. But anyways, this show is all about tight vocal harmonies and choreographed and intertwined arms around period microphones. So what I think that the point is they had to work as one body and one voice. And then when it was their chance, they were able to step out and be able to shine. So I think this show is licensed now by Music Theater International. It's done all over the country. It was just undone at the Friends of the Arlington Theater and at Walnut Hill School. So it's really great. And I've toured all over the world with it. So I've acted as a producer, as a director, as a manager, as a general manager. So I understand the theater from a variety of different angles. I'm also a professor of theater and musical theater at the Boston Conservatory at Berkeley, where I teach musical theater performance and also devising for the musical theater. And musical theater is the most collaborative of all the arts, because you have, on the theater side, you have the writers and you have the designers who are creating the environment for the theater, for the show. And then you have the music element. So you have the musical director, the composers, the arrangers, and then you have the choreographer who's also that is making it dance. So only when all of these artists work together to tell a story in a unified and clear way, to excite and vigorously excite and impact an audience, can it be successful. So it is all about the art of collaboration. I also teach devising, and I advise graduate students in the creation of their own works, and I help them to find their own voices and tell their own stories, and I do that by listening to what they have to say, to what it is they want and how they want to say it. And then to ask questions that if they answer, then they'll be able to answer their own questions. And then I help them to kind of place that into a context and a structure, and a theatrical structure. And they do it with great joy and humor and honesty and heartbreak and inspiration. And I'm very lucky because of that. I've lived in Brookline for 25 years. I love the city. I think I love the people. I love the parks. I love the heart that beats underneath what the city is all about. And I want to give back. I looked at everything I could about this commission, and I find that the emphasis is really on the visual arts and the music. I think that I have experience with those too because of the kind of background I have, but I think that I can bring a look at how these arts can be combined and how theater can become really a part of what's going on in this community. So if you think that I have the knowledge and the experience that will benefit the committee, I would be delighted to serve on it.
Great. I'm very partial to the theatrical arts, especially musical theater.
All right.
But Bernard?
Yes, if I heard you correct, you were involved with Karamu Theater in
Yeah.
Cleveland.
Yes.
Well, that impresses me. The home of, not the home, but a theater where Langston Hughes spent a lot of time, as well as our own Bobby Nabel here in Brookline.
Ah.
Little piece of information that I know about since I lived in Cleveland and really enjoyed Karamu. And what it's doing today is really just incredible, given its history. At any rate, so I guess my question I always ask is, what are your thoughts or what are your ideas of how we can use the arts, visual, theater arts, or others, to sort of assist the educational process, with students as well as just people outside of school context, as an educational tool to help people really understand not only, ABCs, but also, how to live together, how to understand the world around them, how to really appreciate diversity and other things. So.
Well, I'm not sure exactly how this commission functions. I tried to read every single thing I could find on it, but I think when you go out and you see theater and you see how now there is diversity in people of color and in a variety of gender and non-binary genders can go and see themselves in the theater. I think it makes a huge difference in how they view themselves and what the possibilities are. I don't know, but I was hoping that there was some kind of program that took especially underserved community, younger community, and even adults that to places like that here in town, like the Wheelock or Company One, but also to the other theaters in the community, because I think that there are ways to do it that can be economically possible, where they can see shows like What the Constitution Means to Me, and even if it's something. Even if it was like a West Side Story, where you're starting to be able to see how people learn to live together and what happens when they don't. And it starts a conversation, and that conversation can come into the classroom. And then there are ways to be able to expand that and also to bring theater into the classroom. I don't know, does that answer your question?
No, it does.
How did you find out about this opportunity?
I believe that I got an email about it.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? John?
No question. I want to thank this applicant, and I'm very impressed with what she's presented tonight. But what you just came up with in your brief exchange with her is kind of interesting, because she said she got an email about it, and I think we need to find out from the Arts Commission how they did such a great job of attracting some new applicants, because this could set an example for other boards and commissions in town. We've had tremendous interest in this from incredibly qualified people, more people than we can possibly pack into one commission. But it's all going to be good in the end, because we learn about people, and those people might come back at another time and fill a position that's either on this or some other board or commission. So I'm anxious to find out from the Arts Commission how they inspired a really good turnout of folks who want to apply currently for some openings on the commission.
Yes, very good point, John. Thank you so much for your interest. We will be making a decision fairly soon.
Thank you.
Have a very good night.
You too.
So next we have, is it Gaurav?
That's for the Diversity Commission.
Yes.
So Evan Hincapi is not interviewing?
If he appears, we will interview him. He has not made it onto the Zoom yet, so I will keep you updated if that changes.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you guys see me?
Yes, we can.
Great.
So if you just want to describe who you are and why you're interested in serving on the commission, and then we will open it up to questions and answers.
Sounds good. First of all, I would like to thank you everyone for giving me an opportunity to be an interviewee at this occasion. My name is Gaurav Sood. First of all, it's not an easy name, but it's definitely a short name. I'm originally from New Delhi, India. For people who don't know India, unofficially by the numbers, it is the largest country in the world. It has about 1.4 billion people. That's 4 people in that country for every American. And America is the 3rd largest. So we are talking big numbers. I am born and raised in the 2nd largest city in the country, which is New Delhi, and it's the Washington, D.C. of India. So it's the political capital. I am from a big city, which means I have seen people from the lowest level of poverty to the highest level possible in this world. And why I bring that up is because as a person who was born and raised in that part of the world, I experienced everything from the bottom to the top. And it's a country where the culture is very different from the culture in the Western world, or at least it used to be. It is getting westernized at a very fast pace. And I came to US to go to college. I went to UNC Charlotte, University of North Carolina at Charlotte, and I completed my master's in business administration, majoring in corporate finance and accounting. And I am a certified public accountant in Massachusetts, and I'm a licensed CPA. And I also have master's in finance. So I came here as a student, and when I landed in Charlotte, North Carolina, I did not want to be here. I wanted to go back. It was something that I was not used to. It was something that was challenging, and I was coming in as an international student, which means I was bringing in a lot of money on bank loans to pay to the university on a student visa with no guarantee of a certain future in this country, or even if I'll get an internship or a job. And here I am, and today I am a US citizen. Started my journey from a student visa. For folks who do not know, America is the toughest country to even get a visitor visa to. That's because everyone wants to come here. There is a lot of good things about this country. And some of the things that I experienced right away were the way I was accepted into the day-to-day life of people. I very quickly, I had some friends in college who sort of like adopted me as their, I was there. They were my American family. So like events like Thanksgiving and Christmas and all that, I had someone to celebrate them with, because I'm the first person from my family. I was here as a teenager. I had no relatives, no friends, no one, nothing. And I'm here with a lot of money from bank on a loan with an uncertain future. So I needed some emotional support. And I felt I was welcomed so well as a student or as an individual who's not born and raised here, who had at the time even a much thicker accent. I spoke English, but I was not, it's not the same English. It is, India was colonized at the time by British. So some of the English is close to British English, nowhere close to American English. So here I am, and I'm trying to pretty much compete with some people who are like doctors and who are going to an MBA program. I did not even know what the culture is. I did not know, I did not have any people to connect with. But it was hard. I went through a lot, but it was never before without the support of my fellow students, friends, and other people who I was surrounded with, that here I am. I experienced a lot of things in my life, but for the most part, they were good things. And I still think this is the greatest nation in the world in so many ways. And I think we all should be very proud that we are here in this country, especially looking at news at what's happening in other parts of the world. So when I would answer one question, even if I'm not asked for, I came to know about this position through Facebook. I'm active on Facebook, and I don't post anything, but I definitely see, what's going on in Boston. And somehow it showed up in my feeds that there are few board seats available in the town of Brookline. I am a Brookline resident for the last 15 years. And somehow Facebook knew I live in Brookline and I might be interested in something like this. And right away, I applied for it. And I would say I'm very proud and very lucky that I was selected for interview. So the reason I am interested in this position is because I'm somebody who's not originally from here, but I'm somebody who has made America my home. I call myself as not someone who's born and raised here, but someone who partially grew up here, who understands not only the culture here, but the culture or the things that people experience when they come here as a student or as an individual for a job. On those lines, I feel like I can connect very closely with people when it comes to diversity, inclusion, and so many other things along those same lines, and share my experience in a very positive way. There are challenges and obstacles, but I have gone through a lot in my life as an immigrant, but not everything. But I feel like I'm in a position where I can share so many things and bring so much to the table as an individual that I will be able to positively contribute to this. And since I've been a Brookline resident, I love Brookline. This is the place where I bought my first home in America. So I'm very proud and very lucky to be here. And this is a point I think I'm at my career and in my age group that I'm ready to give it back. So this opportunity came by and I was like, I'm definitely interested in.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you for anticipating my question. Nice to know that we are advertising on Facebook. Kind of creepy, but also, very effective, apparently. So, any questions from my fellow board members? Bernard.
Yeah. By the way, you anticipated and answered my main question, but I would like to ask you to sort of elaborate a little more in terms of, any thoughts you have as to how the commission could be more effective with respect to welcoming immigrant communities to Brookline, to America. Now, the immigrants that that we're talking about are a lot different than you were coming from India. Many of them come here under really adverse circumstances, but still, I'm sure you can add some insight that maybe the rest of us would be missing.
I think first of all, I would say it's a very good question. The first point I would say I would like to cover up some bullet points is have someone who is not originally from here. That goes a long way, and have a brief description about the person, whosoever is selected, to say a few things about where they are originally from, how did they end up here, and what do they bring to this table. And then not having much history into what the commission does or what their roles and responsibilities are. But in I would say, like what I have seen my friends or other people do in similar situations in other parts of the country is when there is a big Brookline Fest or a festival, something like that, have an outreach to the immigrant community in a way that it is highlighted either on the website or as like an in-person meet or an opportunity to have maybe a once a month discussion or a panel where people can come and just have a an open conversation about what their experiences are how they are feeling about being in Massachusetts or in Brookline, or just connecting on a person-to-person level, and then go from each individual case, like what are the kind of things they would like to learn, or some of the issues they are having emotionally or mentally, and how I can, or whosoever is selected to this position, can help that.
Any other questions? Thank you so much for your interest, and we will be making a decision at another meeting. We will
Sounds
let
good.
you know.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
You too.
Bye.
So Devin, I assume that the fourth interview is not happening this evening.
No, I don't see them in the attendee list, but I'll be sure to reach out on email just to see if they'd like to join us next week or if they're withdrawing their candidacy.
Thank you so much. And then I understand that you are presenting for the Select Board Fiscal Year 23 Departmental Budget Review. You're muted.
How funny is that?
I know.
I am excited to be presenting to the board, and I want to thank Mel and Melissa and Justin for giving me the opportunity to dive in to the budget process this year, as we've been a little short-staffed. So I have a quick slide deck for you, and obviously we'll be timing myself to make sure I'm within the 7-minute time requirement. Can you see that okay?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. So I have taken an opportunity here to show you a screenshot of the overview of the Select Board budget from OpenGov, which, as you know, is our interactive software program that we use for our budgeting process. And what I'm going to do here is just highlight the variances. As you can see, the difference between FY22 and FY23 is $139,824. There's a couple of reasons behind that. The first is salary savings from removal of the one-time expense for the social services assessment, which has to do with Harold Cox from BU and the work that he's doing for the health department. Additionally, we're seeing salary savings from turnover in the assistant town administrator position, as well as the fact that we have a vacancy with the cannabis coordinator right now. And the last item, which is really the bulk of this variance, is that the HCA expenses budget-wide have been removed from the base budget and are now a special appropriation. So that's how you're seeing all HCA funding across the town's budget being represented. In services, you will see the boards and commissions software and OpenGov services are reflected there. We went down about $10,000 as we didn't need as much support in this fiscal year. You'll also see that COVID restoration is in the other category, and that's the MAPC Metro Mayor's membership. And then the small increase that you'll see for budgeted capital is for the additional leased PCs. So a couple of highlights that I just want to make clear is that we've established the licensing assistant part-time position. This is in continuation of our, kind of evolving assessment of what it takes to run licensing out of the Select Board's office. Some of you may remember we had a part-time position that was a COVID cut that was never restored. And we have reformulated that into a new position that can support some of the initiatives that are coming forward, such as short-term rentals, the outdoor dining program, and increased interest around the lodging houses and some other license groups. We have the ARP grant administration that's going on in our office. Tyler Belisle-Toller has been an excellent addition. His position was funded technically in FY22, but he is a newer employee who is serving as our grant administrator as well as a budget analyst. We have worked really diligently in this office with Bird Guess and the racial equity work that Dr. Lloyd Gelano has been leading, but we're serving sort of as an accountability mechanism in the Select Board's office, and that has been a major project that we're very proud of. I'll come before you again in a little over a month to talk about the implementation of the Granicus boards and commissions software. I had a great meeting with the team today, and we are very close to being able to put that inlay on the website, which will make the boards and commissions process smoother for everyone, internal and external. We are actively working to advance the hybrid public meetings, working diligently to fill these department head vacancies. And then, of course, our office is involved in the ongoing support of the US Open Golf Championship event and logistics. Here you'll see the FY23 Select Board FTE chart. FTE, for those who don't know, is a full-time employee. And the variance this year, as I mentioned, is just that part-time employee that we're having support the licensing function in the office due to increased demand. As I mentioned, the ARPA grants budget analyst was added in the last fiscal year. So you can see that this is a great picture and snapshot of what our office looks like at this time with those vacancies that I mentioned. I was excited to take on Heather's questions about the top 3 kind of high level issues, and I was able to talk with Mel and Melissa and Justin, and we sort of brainstormed together. But the biggest challenge over the last 2 years has definitely been operating under budget constraints due to COVID-19 while experiencing requests for increased and expanded services, which I know you hear about every week. We are struggling right now to fill the cannabis coordinator position in our office. This will be the 4th time that we've gone out for the job. You know, we are having trouble hiring across the board, as are many other cities and towns. And then obviously the vacancy in the finance department and the finance director has a direct impact on our office because Justin is serving in that interim capacity downstairs. And then I would say just, you know, an evolving challenge is managing the increased level of high level projects as a result of town meeting and select board initiatives. With an unlimited budget, this is an exciting question, but I think, you know, after talking to Tiffany and also checking in with Kate, you know, there are a lot of requests that come to our office somewhat haphazardly. I think the number one request, and Melissa and Justin would be upset if I didn't say this, is for many years now, they have requested additional budget analysts. And I could absolutely see an entire budget division to really get into, you know, some deeper level of analysis that just with 2 people who have been putting together this phenomenal budget over the last few years, I can't imagine, you know, we could really get into the details and do some high level analysis on where what programs are thriving and what could use more monetary support. So a budget division is at the top of the list. A communications division is my personal pet project and also something that I know that select board members are passionate about, as well as members of the community, because I think, you know, our social media, and I was, you know, even though you said it was creepy, Heather, we are trying to advance our social media strategy, and that could be really propelled and catapulted forward and reach a lot more residents if we had some dedicated staff to actually working on telling our story, messaging, social media, website, and the like. In doing research for the part-time licensing position, I became aware that there are many cities and towns much smaller than us that have full licensing divisions. And when I think about the phenomenal job that Tiffany has been doing with all of the licenses in Brookline, you know, that is absolutely something that we could expand upon. And then community engagement and resident services. I think, you know, through our racial equity work, as well as working with Carolina San Miguel, the select board's office has, you know, kind of developed this lens in everything that we're doing. But I would, you know, I think it would be a great opportunity to kind of expand the reach of our department. Like I said before, a lot of things come up to our office from different departments, residents trying to figure out where to get problems solved. And this could be a division that takes a lot of work off of the plate of our existing employees so they can really focus on what their main tasks are at hand. Where do we see the department in 5 years? This was a tricky question as there is a lot of change ahead. There will be a new town administrator. You know, there could be a charter change in the future. So these were all things that we discussed as we were talking about this item. I absolutely know that this office will be managing the structural gap for the town and school budgets. We're in a really exciting place right now because department heads as you can see, 9 department heads will be in their current role for less than 5 years. So I'm expecting that this department, our department, is going to see a lot of requests from department heads who are kind of emerging in their roles to change the way we deliver services and bring some new energy and excitement. And this office is really in charge of corralling that and helping support their vision. And then the last item is, definitely a strategic plan for the select board to prioritize initiatives in town. And that is the conclusion of the presentation. I think I'm clocking in at just over 7.5 minutes. So thank you for the extra 30 seconds, and I'm happy to take questions.
Excellent presentation. Any questions from other select board members before I go to my own questions? So, okay, Bernard.
Okay, Devin, you talked about the racial equity training work. What about GARE? I mean, that seems to have sort of dropped off the edge of the earth. What are they up to, and why aren't they included in this piece of the report?
Thank you for asking. So GARE is actually a little bit before my time. That had been implemented and, is still actively, those tools and that toolkit is something that the Department of Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations references often. But we, this past year, have been working with the Racial Equity Group, which is led by Bird Guess. And he has been doing a lot of on-the-ground training with department heads, division staff, kind of working on a racial equity plan for each department. So GARE gives those overarching frameworks and a toolkit for you to kind of be able to draw back to and say, am I looking at it through this lens? Whereas the work that we've done with Bird and the Racial Equity Group says specifically, this is how I'm working in the Department of Public Works to advance racial equity, not only internally, but when we're engaging and interfacing with the public in parks and open space. I remember specifically Feng Yang, the Chief Information Officer in IT, has had some really creative suggestions that Bird has been able to further for them. So I think what we're doing right now, Bernard, to answer your question, is that GARE sort of serves as like a toolkit for people to refer back to and use those online resources. I know that there was a portal at some point for folks to get support from. And then the Racial Equity Group that we've been working with over the last year has helped us really drill down and put some of those plans into action.
Great.
There's a little overlap there, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they're working in tandem.
John.
Thanks. And thanks, Devin. That was really it was really helpful and very informative, very clear. On the other hand, I do find myself a little bit puzzled about one aspect of things. So if I go to the budget and the FTEs section, the full-time equivalent position section, there's charts for every one of the departments, and the charts track FY19, 20, 21, 22, 23, what were the positions in the budget. And the positions in FY22 were 7, and the positions in FY23 are 8.5. And somewhere in your explanation, there was mention of an additional half, but this looks to me like an additional 1.5, which, by the way, I would be all for. But can you give me a sense of what is the difference in terms of the actual added capabilities between the 7 positions in FY22 and the 8.5 in FY23?
Thank you for asking that clarifying question, John, because I wasn't entirely sure how to present this, but I did just mention as a quick footnote that our ARPA grants administrator and budget analyst, Tyler Belisle-Toller, he's technically an FY22 employee, but he was not that position and wasn't even a twinkle in our eye at the point when this budget, the FY22 budget, was being developed. He was added to that ARPA emergency grant, but technically under FY22. So you wouldn't necessarily see that in the chart. I was torn about how to present it to say if it was an addition for FY23, because technically it was not, but he is now working for us full time. It was a huge support with the budget process, and I know he's really digging in on the ARP process as well. That 0.5, like I mentioned, is the licensing assistant, and we have not yet hired for that role, but I am hoping that it will serve as a huge support to Tiffany as we, go through this massive expansion, not only with short-term rentals, but a permanent outdoor seating program.
That's great. So one position is an ARPA that was continued into the FY23 with municipal funding, not ARPA funding.
So with ARPA funding.
Oh, with ARPA funding.
Tyler
Okay.
is totally funded through ARP.
Okay.
Which is allowed as a use.
Oh, that's fine. I just, this is going to help me get clarification on a couple of other things. So are there ARPA funded positions in the FY23 budget? And can you tell when you look at the budget document, what's an ARPA funded position and what's not?
So Tyler is an ARPA funded position, and I don't think you would necessarily know that unless you were looking at the charge offs. But I can kind of explain that, and we can also add the benefit of the interactive budget. And I've really enjoyed working in OpenGov is that you can make changes and make it more readable and suitable to what folks are looking for on the fly. So we can annotate that certainly.
I don't think that we have really made decisions with ARPA funding too often in the past year. So this is the only, at least full-time position that I'm aware of, right, Mel? That's using ARPA funding?
That's correct. That was from the $1.9 million COVID budget, or the direct COVID related stuff and the administration of the budget that the board has approved. So it's the only position currently that's in the budget.
Mm-hmm. But point well taken, John, that we should notate going forward any positions that are being funded out of that bucket.
Do you have time to let me just do one more question, or should I hold it?
Of course, John.
Of course. Okay. So the other thing I wanted to ask about is going back to the BFAC report, the Brookline Financial Fiscal Advisory Committee, and a recommendation that they made that it was not the first time it has been made that the administrative capabilities of the select board's office really do need to be made more robust with additional position or positions. Have we accomplished that? And is it possible to sort of put our finger on what is the position that addresses what BFAC was looking for?
Devin, I'll take that. It's the budget position. It's the grant funded position that is not only manages the grant, but also takes advantage of our expanded budget analyst position. So that's the one, John. I think we indicated that we would need at least two to begin to fully implement some of the BFAC recommendations. So now we have one. And granted, it is funded through the ARP and shared to some extent. But that is the position that directly is related to the BFAC recommendations.
And that's Tyler.
Correct.
Yes, great. Thanks. Okay.
Any other? Oh, Bernard?
Yeah, can I just make a comment? I think we ought to, and we've talked about this many times in the past, the performance workload indicators, and we kind of really figure out a way of making that useful as well as informative. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that could be used to indicate, whether from year to year we have actually accomplished what we set out to accomplish. And I think we need to, make sure that gets in there. I mean, for example, let's see, what's an example? We always talk about diversity, and we have these quarterly diversity reports. I think it'd be useful to include that in the objectives and performance indicators, to indicate whether we've actually achieved anything. I think, and maybe I'm confusing this with when I worked at the Treasury, but I think there was some talk of a gender and racial salary equity study. I mean, I think that that is something that, you know, it's going to be a process, but it'd be a type of thing that it'd be useful to just get a report on in you know, in this category. I mean, the BFAC stuff, for example, would be another one. But at any rate, I mean, I just think we need to find some way of making this more useful, you know, part of the budget.
I agree with that totally. As someone who was tracking down the workload indicators for the budget process from the respective departments. So, you know, that's something that we can revisit. And like I mentioned before in the presentation, with a larger budget team, those types of things could really be explored and reevaluated and revisited more frequently.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting that other departments do a better job. I mean, this is a town-wide problem, in my opinion. You know, I mean, we can either take this out of the budget or do it right. And I think let's try to do it right first.
Any other questions or comments about this budget presentation? Thank you so much, Devin. It was very concise and to the point. Bernard?
Yeah, I also want to thank you for sending the budget book to us in a format that can be read. I think last year it was just unreadable for those of us whose eyes aren't, you know, perfectly aligned. But it's very, very helpful, and it's the best way for us 20th century guys to, you know, get a hold of the full picture.
Glad to hear that, Bernard. Thank you.
Well, that's a high bar for the other departments to follow. So I can't wait to see what happens next. Moving to our only public hearing of the evening, a grant of location for Verizon. I believe a man named Ross is going to talk about the project.
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, great. My name is Ross Bilodeau. I am representing Verizon New England this evening. So this petition is for Cypress Street and Milton Road. Verizon is looking to place one new 4-inch conduit along with one shadow conduit for town use, approximately 130 feet, starting from an existing manhole 38/71 located on the westerly side of Cypress Street, heading in a northerly direction for 33 feet, then turning westerly for 90 feet, and then turning southerly for 5 feet to the existing pole 108/1 on the southerly side of Milton Road. It's my understanding that this new conduit is needed for to get some fiber optics up out of the underground so that we can have a fiber project around the corner here. We need to get access from the underground over to the poles.
Great. Thank you so much for that concise description. Any questions by board members? Bernard, and then John, if John's hand up is not a holdover. Bernard?
Yeah, it may be in the materials, I may have missed it, but the shadow conduit for the town, this has come up before. Could you sort of give us a sense of what that is and how it's going to be used?
Sure. A shadow conduit is going to be placed whenever we're doing a trench and having a petition with you guys. We need to place a similar duct that can be used for town use purposes, so that you can, you know, use our manhole systems, or if you're running your own town fiber, you can have access to the poles as well as Verizon manhole and underground systems.
Great. Was that your question, John? I know that's an issue that is important to you.
My middle name is Shadow Conduit. It was a question. I'm just wondering if Robert King from our DPW is here for this. And I mentioned that name because he gave me such an education on shadow conduits, and it really spoke to the excellence of the people in our DPW. And frankly, I'm very pleased that the mention of shadow conduit was not because I asked about it, but because it's, I hope, going to be part of, routinely part of these particular types of hearings. So that it's kind of built in as a feature of whenever we do this kind of work in Brookline, if it is appropriate. It's not appropriate everywhere, but in a lot of locations, it will be appropriate to include a shadow conduit. And if Robert King is here, he might want to offer his explanation to the layperson as to what a shadow conduit is for.
Yes, Mr. King is here.
Good evening to the board. For the record, my name is Rob King, Director of Engineering and Transportation for the town of Brookline. Appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening. Through the chair, Select Board Member Van Scoik and I had a great conversation about shadow conduit. As he noted, it is something that we require. Page 6 of your packet, item number 2 on that, it is required in every instance. That being said, as I shared with John, it's not leveraging the installation of that shadow conduit is always the challenge, right? The devil's in the details. And so in an instance like this, where we're going approximately 130 feet around a corner, would this be a perfect opportunity to leverage shadow conduit? Most likely not. But if we were imagining a longer stretch of infrastructure that was going to be put in the ground, we would certainly work with our partners at Verizon or whatever other communication entity was putting the infrastructure in the ground to leverage that shadow conduit. So in this case, we probably, this isn't something we would take advantage of. But there are certainly plenty of situations moving forward where I can imagine this being beneficial to us.
Great, thank you so much for working to make sure that this is a possibility, especially on this project. Bernard.
Yeah, I'd like to get, actually what I wanted to know is what type of use does the town put these shadow conduits to? And what is it that we put through the conduits well, what is it we put through the conduits and what's the purpose?
Sure, through the chair, great question. So I've worked for a number of municipalities now, and I will say the use ends up depending on the situation. And so, for example, the town of Framingham, there was a situation where we were trying to provide town-owned fiber from the schools to the municipal buildings that covered all of the major intersections in town, so we could set up camera equipment. And so we actually had they had a combination of shadow conduit and town-owned conduit, now city, that formed a loop that they were able to leverage. Other municipalities might lease that shadow conduit out to a third party for another use as it relates to communications. And so I've been involved in examples like that as well. So it's really, it depends on what the city or town wants to do long-term as it relates to that shadow conduit.
So is it useful to say that the conduit is more like an Ethernet cable that can be used for various purposes?
Sure. I think that's a great explanation. It's basically an empty pipe in the ground that gives somebody an opportunity to use that space for communications wiring, whether it's FiOS or other.
Bernard, did you?
Fiber or other, excuse me.
Bernard, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I did. So there's some talk around town about the town creating its own internet system. I assume that this conduit would be a valuable resource in the event that we were to proceed in that direction. Just throwing it out for people to think about.
It certainly would, and I think, again, back to the conversation that John and I had, really it's identifying what you want and where you want it, and then we can start to lay out the framework for how we get that in the ground. So definitely a possibility. Thank you.
Mel, did you want to contribute anything?
Yeah, I
before I
would just
call on
say
John?
that, yes, please, thank you. We're talking about 150 feet here, so, I don't think we should get too overly excited about it. But our point is to, whenever possible, to create these opportunities so that maybe in the future we can link places. This one in particular is near, not too far from our schools and other municipal settings. So it's really an opportunity, a strategic opportunity to reserve as much of these conduit space as we can, and then perhaps put something bigger together.
John?
Yeah, I'm going to go way out on a limb here because I hope I get this correct. I do think that one of the other possible advantages, underscore possible advantages of shadow conduit as a routine where it makes sense part of these kinds of permits is that we all would be advantaged if we minimized the amount of digging that goes on in the streets. And if there's going to be a well-established shadow conduit policy, it could lead towards various utilities doing more coordination with one another, so that if utility A wants to do work that would require digging on a given street, and utility B has already gotten permit to do some digging that would include a shadow conduit, maybe utility A can rent the shadow conduit from utility B, and you've got two utilities taking care of their needs in one dig. So I hope that that's an accurate representation of what is a possible advantage of this. That was my understanding.
I think that's a great summary, John. Thanks.
Great. This is a public hearing, so if you want to make a public comment, use the Q&A feature to let Devin know that you would like to be promoted. You'll have up to 3 minutes. So let's give that some time. Devin, has anybody reached out to you indicating they would like to make public comment?
This time there are 8 attendees and no one has used the hand raise or Q&A feature to indicate they'd like to make a comment.
We'll just give it another minute. Bernard?
I just want to make clear that the shadow conduit is, well, correct me if I'm wrong, is owned by the town. So if it's going to be rented out to a utility, we would be renting it out, or is that not correct?
I believe that's correct.
Okay.
That's been my experience as well.
Good point.
The first person signed up for public comment is Regina Frawley. You've been promoted to a panelist. You can unmute and share your video if you're comfortable, and your 3 minutes will begin.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We had the digitized come on from Verizon come on Russet Road. Recently, my neighbors have all been complaining about the difficulty in the landline that was reliable when it was copper wired and is no longer reliable. In my particular case, I lost phone calls, I lost internet. The battery backups doesn't work if FiOS is somehow down, and it was down. I couldn't, if I didn't have a cell phone, I couldn't have called for help to even complain about it. I'm hearing you all talk about the benefits. How about raising the question of the liabilities and do some homework as to what the downside of FiOS can be, especially if you introduce it into major buildings? I know that on my street, we were forced to do it. We had no choice. We received a very intimidating letter saying if we didn't switch, we would lose our landline, possibly no phone at all. It's really not a great way to have done business, and I got rid of it. and I'm glad I got rid of it. I haven't had any problems with the new provider. But it's something you, as a responsibility for the municipal buildings in town, you have to look at the downside. And I wonder if you could discuss those or ask questions.
I'm not really sure whether this is relevant to this particular grant of location.
Why don't
we
you
have-
ask if it is? Because it sounds like they're getting ready. Street by street is the policy at Verizon right now. If they put in the FiOS, they plan to then make the whole street FiOS as opposed to copper wired.
Regina, I understand, I think the point that you're trying to make, but the control that the town has over the private service that a company provides. I see Mel's hand up. Do you have anything that you want to add, Mel?
Well, just to say very clearly that Verizon is not installing FiOS service in this town. We would love them to do that.
It's on my street, Mel.
No, not FiOS. I don't know what they
Excuse
call
me,
it.
I just got rid of them.
Okay.
I-
They don't
Don't
provide
patronize
FiOS
me. It's
service here.
Any other members of the public that want to make a comment?
At this time, there are 9 attendees and no one has used the hand raise or Q&A feature to indicate they'd like to make a comment.
Okay, I will close the public hearing. Is there just one vote associated with this?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Any other questions or comments, Bernard?
Yeah, I'm sure Mel knows what's coming into the town. And if he thinks FiOS is not coming in, it's not coming in. But I'd like to suggest that Regina send us, whatever paperwork she received from Verizon that leads her to believe that FiOS is coming in. Maybe we can sort of clarify, what's going on, or maybe understand some things that maybe we don't understand. So
That's a good suggestion. Any other comments before I move the vote language? Okay. So I propose approving the grant of location request from Verizon New England to lay and maintain underground conduits with wires and cables to be placed therein under the surface of the following public ways: Cypress Street and Milton Road. Place one new 4-inch conduit along with one shadow conduit for town use, approximately 130 feet, starting from existing manhole MH 38-71, located on the westerly side of Cypress Street, heading in a northerly direction of 33 feet, then turning westerly for 90 feet, and then turning southerly for 5 feet to existing pole P108-1 on southerly side of Milton Road. All those in favor? Bernard.
aye.
John.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you for your time. Take care.
So the last calendar item on our agenda, keep in mind that we were down 2 select board members this week because it is school vacation. So we were trying to keep this meeting very light so that they did not miss too much, is the appointments to the Zero Emissions Advisory Board. I think last week we appointed, or maybe the week before, we appointed the chair, Jesse Gray, and he has been in communication with each of the 5 of us, trying to recruit and make a recommendation for a slate for this newly formed board. I'm going to read some language that has been offered by Jesse as well as our town council's office. It is important to acknowledge that the Zero Emissions Advisory Board will be making important decisions and recommendations, including ones with financial consequences. Given the kinds of expertise helpful to the board, it is expected that real or apparent conflicts of interest will arise from time to time. In these appointments, the Select Board wishes to make clear its expectation that ZAB members, like members of any official board, commission, or committee, take steps at every juncture to ensure compliance with conflict of interest requirements. A key component will be to seek advice of town council at the times when potential conflicts first arise, to receive timely guidance that can address the specific circumstances. So at this time, it has been recommended that the slate be as follows: Calvin Thompson for a 1-year term, Kathleen Scanlon for a 2-year term, Werner Lohe for a 2-year term, Wendy Stahl for a 3-year term, and of course, Jesse Gray, the chair, has already been appointed for a 3-year term. Is there any discussion before we move on the slate? Bernard?
Yes, I don't mean to be difficult, but I will be. Now, first of all, we have 3 members, which is a quorum, but I assume that a positive vote is 2 out of 3, not 3 out of 5. But assuming that to be the case, again, Linda Pelkey has raised some legitimate concerns regarding the process here. And, I may not, I know I don't know the full background story of the changes to the Climate Action Committee. Although I've been given, the explanations, and I've talked to people, including Werner Lohe, who's been very, very helpful. And I appreciate, Werner's willingness to talk to me. And, while Linda raises a couple questions. That one is the chair of the committee. And while there's precedent for the select board appointing the chair of a committee, as I said last time, this was before us, it may not be the best approach for this board, but I think more importantly and more significant for me is that we have not interviewed these individuals. And, in my opinion, I think climate mitigation, even on this little speck of land on this huge earth that is Brookline, is important enough to have some process for determining whether the members of the board, like this, are the people who can work together and can work with our sustainability director and town departments to achieve meaningful climate goals. So, I definitely don't want to get in the way, but I will be abstaining on this vote. I just want to get that.
I appreciate those words. I did read Linda's email, and I do believe that two positive votes hold. I specifically told Jesse that he needed consensus by my fellow board members, no objections over the people themselves that are being proposed. That being said, my reaction to Linda Olson-Pelkey's email is that this board and other boards that are created by the select board and appointed through the select board by the select board are at will, and they serve at the pleasure. And sometimes we decide to make changes. And I don't take the position that I have to ask permission from another body on the changes that I feel are necessary. John?
Yes, thanks. I just want to clarify a couple of things, if I may. I hope this is clarifying for folks. Yes, Miriam and Raul Fernandez are not here tonight. I don't think Heather and I would be taking the vote, which I expect we will, in favor of these appointments if we thought that Miriam and Raul would oppose the appointments. It's just a circumstance that, is what it is. And I think that if they were here tonight, I don't want to speak for them. I'm confident we would have the same result as I think we're going to get from the vote we take tonight. They can speak for themselves when they come back if I've misstated in any respect their positions on this. And then I just want to say that I hope people recognize that this is not just any old change of plan. on any old issue. It's a change of plan on what could arguably be the most important issue that we confront as a town, and which every town in every state and every nation is confronting right now, and that is the threat that is posed by climate change. If climate change is not dealt with and is not, to the maximum extent possible, reversed with policies that reduce as close to zero as possible the emissions of greenhouse gases. So with that, in that spirit, I mean, with that as the issue before us, and in the spirit of taking that issue and making it the highest possible priority and giving it the best of expertise with an aim of action that will be recommended to the select board at the earliest possible date. That's why we're doing what we're doing. And it involves some element of risk, but we're very fortunate to have people of the caliber that we have on this list of appointees. And I'm fully confident that we're at least off to a good start. We've got good people who know what they're all about, and they know what this is all about. And I look forward to the first fruits of the appointment of this committee.
I'll also say that there were more applicants than there were positions. This was an advertised board. People were free to apply and be considered. We're considering a slate that the chair has proposed. As far as interviews, I understand why that feels like it's transparent. But at the end of the day, an interview does not tell you how that person is going to act with all the other people who serve on the board or how they interact with staff. It only shows us how they deal with questions posed by us. Sometimes it does tease out, more information than they provide on the application, but the five of us are charged with making decisions about appointments, and however we want to do that, it's our right. Bernard?
Yeah, of course it's all right, Heather. And, I just want to, for the record, say that face-to-face interviews tell me a lot about whether someone can work together with others in the sandbox. I find that you get a lot of information just by how people answer questions. Everything from the way they present themselves, body language, etc. So just for the record, I think that talking to people face to face is a good way of determining whether, not with 100% clarity, but is a good way of determining whether a group is going to work together in a good way to achieve the goals that are set out. But
then I encourage you to reach out to the applicants. Any other discussion? I will move the appointment of the slate of names and the terms that I said a few moments ago. Bernard?
Abstain.
John?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. I believe that is our meeting.
Great.
Great. Thank you so much. And we will see you next week.